There is a battlefield far more subtle than any you see with your eyes. It is not fought with weapons or with armies. It is fought within the chambers of your own mind. And unless you train it, discipline it, and understand it, you will be a prisoner in your own kingdom. The mind is not a curse, nor is it a gift freely given. It is a tool. Like fire, it can warm your soul or burn your house to the ground. Most people are ruled by thoughts they never chose, beliefs they never questioned, and fears they have never dared to confront. They live not as sovereign beings, but as echoes of others, reacting, not responding, surviving, not living. But you, if you are listening, must become something different. You must become conscious. To win in every situation, you must begin by understanding that no situation is ever just external. The outside world is a projection of the inner world. The chaos you see outside often mirrors the conflict within. The opportunities that pass you by may be the reflection of the doubt hiding inside you. Therefore, the first victory is inward. The first opponent is the unconscious self, the part of you that sabotages dreams in the name of comfort, that chooses silence in the name of peace, and that avoids truth to protect a fragile illusion. There is a darkness within every human being. Call it fear, anger, pride, or pain, but it is there, and until you face it, speak to it, and make peace with it, you will always be half a person. You cannot command a mind that hides from itself. The darkness is not your enemy. It is your unacknowledged strength, your unspoken potential, your unlived life. When you own it, when you integrate it, you become whole. And from wholeness, true power is born. Train your mind to be your servant, not your master. Thoughts will come and go. They are like birds in the sky. Do not become attached to them. Observe them, question them, guide them. Do not be deceived into believing every thought is true simply because it is loud. Truth is not always loud. Often, it is a whisper in the storm, and to hear it, your mind must be still, sharp, and disciplined. There will be pain on this path. There will be moments where silence screams, where uncertainty suffocates, and where even your soul will question the journey. But pain is not the end, it is the purifier. When you find meaning in suffering, when you use pain as a signal rather than a sentence, then no adversity can break you. You do not rise despite the pain, you rise through it. Your endurance becomes your transformation. Do not train your mind merely to think faster or louder or better. Train it to listen, to the quiet voice of purpose, to the wisdom of the soul, to the divine order moving through all things. Align your mind with the depths of your being. The mind was never meant to lead, it was meant to serve. When your thoughts serve your soul, when your will aligns with a higher calling, then even chaos becomes an instrument of your becoming. Winning is not defeating others. Winning is the realization of your full being. Winning is self, mastery, spiritual integrity, and the quiet peace that comes when you are no longer at war with yourself. Train your mind for this. Train your mind to find strength in stillness, wisdom in failure, and purpose in every moment, especially the difficult ones. That is how you win, in every situation, in every season, in every breath. To train your mind to win in every situation, you must begin with one sacred act, the commitment to know yourself. Not in the superficial sense of knowing your likes or dislikes, or the narrative you repeat to others about who you are, but in the profound psychological sense, peering into the quiet depths of your being and asking, who is directing my thoughts? Who is moving my emotions? What in me reacts? Before I even understand why, this act of turning inward is not weakness, it is war. For to know yourself truly is to confront all the forces within that have, until now, gone unexamined and unchallenged. Self-awareness is not a passive experience. It is the most courageous confrontation a person can undertake. It requires stripping away layers of conditioning, memory, fear, pride, and projection. Most people live their lives responding to the world based on unconscious scripts written long ago by parents, culture, trauma, or repetition. They do not act, they react. They are driven by unseen motives and shaped by unknown wounds. And in this unconscious state, the mind becomes a battlefield where the individual is both the soldier and the casualty. Victory, therefore, begins not in controlling the world outside, but in illuminating the world within. A man who does not understand himself cannot master his mind. He may try to force discipline, to build habits, to chant affirmations, or repeat motivational quotes, but all of it is surface work if the roots of his thoughts remain in darkness. A mind trained without self-awareness is like a sword sharpened in the dark, dangerous to others, but especially to the one who holds it. Until you see the origins of your thoughts, they will own you. Until you question your beliefs, they will imprison you. Until you see where your reactions are born, they will continue to hijack your behavior without permission. The first weapon of the mind, then, is not logic, nor focus, nor even will. It is awareness. The mind must be observed before it can be trained. Watch it as you would watch a river from a quiet rock, not interfering, not judging, just witnessing. Observe how a thought of fear arrives, how it triggers the body to tighten, how it compels you to shrink or avoid. Trace the chain. Where did that fear first arise? What memory lives beneath it? What part of you still believes that fear protects you from harm? And then watch how, when you become aware of it, the fear shifts. It no longer controls you. It becomes an object in consciousness, something that can be studied, addressed, even dissolved. That is the alchemy of awareness. What once ruled you becomes subject to your gaze. This is the essence of inner transformation. Not to eliminate all that is dark or painful within you, but to see it so clearly that it loses its power to control you. Many people imagine that personal growth is about becoming better, more successful, more disciplined, or more positive. But real transformation is not becoming more. It is becoming more aware, for awareness changes everything. A person who sees clearly no longer clings to destructive patterns, not because they are forced to let go, but because those patterns dissolve under the light of consciousness. Every situation in life, whether joyous or painful, is an invitation to self-awareness. If you are rejected, do not simply wallow in the emotion of observe it. What does it awaken in you? What story does it trigger? What part of your identity feels threatened or wounded? And ask yourself, is that part truly you, or a mask you adopted long ago to survive? If you are praised, do not simply celebrate the approval of your reaction. Do you feel validated, inflated, seen, or superior? And ask yourself, why does this approval feel necessary? What inner emptiness does it temporarily fill? In this way, self-awareness becomes a daily practice, a sacred discipline. It requires brutal honesty and tender compassion. You must be willing to look at your pettiness, your jealousy, your insecurity, your need for control. Not to judge yourself, but to understand what is driving you. When you understand it, you can heal it. And when you heal it, your mind becomes a servant of your soul, not a slave to your wounds. People often chase strength in external ways. They want to build physical power, wealth, social influence, or strategic intelligence. But the strongest person in any room is not the loudest, not the richest, not even the most intelligent. The strongest person is the one who is most aware of themselves. That person cannot be manipulated, cannot be provoked, cannot be controlled by unconscious forces. They respond rather than react. They choose rather than comply. They see clearly, and in that clarity there is unshakable power. When you train your mind through self-awareness, you begin to see how much of life you were asleep for. You see how often you spoke from ego, not essence. How often you acted from fear, not freedom. How often you betrayed your own values just to be accepted by others. But do not despair. This awakening is not shameful. It is sacred. You are not meant to be perfect. You are meant to be whole. And wholeness begins the moment you choose to see yourself fully and meet what you see not with judgment, but with the intention to understand. Let this awareness become your inner compass. In every situation, turn inward first. Ask, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Is this emotion guiding me toward truth or away from it? What wound in me is being touched right now? What belief is shaping my perception? Do I want to keep carrying this belief, or is it time to let it go? These questions, asked sincerely, will do more to train your mind than 100 self-help books or external strategies. Self-awareness will cost you your illusions, but it will reward you with vision. You will lose your false identities, but you will find your essence. You will no longer blame the world for your suffering, because you will see that much of that suffering was created by your unconscious attachment to pain, to stories, to roles. And in that realization, you become free, not from pain, not from challenge, but from being its victim. You become the witness, the architect, the master. The beginning of all mastery is to see yourself, not as the world has labeled you, not as your mind has deceived you, but as you truly are. The journey is not easy. There will be resistance, avoidance, even fear, but walk through it, because on the other side of self-awareness is a mind that no longer sabotages, but serves. A mind that no longer resists truth, but welcomes it. A mind that is no longer reactive, but radiant with clarity. This is the trained mind, and it begins with the first and final weapon, awareness. Life does not happen to you, it happens through you. Every experience, every person you encounter, every high and every low, each is a reflection, a mirror held up to reveal what lives within you. Until you understand this, you will continue to misinterpret reality as something external, something separate from your own consciousness. But once you awaken to this truth, the world becomes your greatest teacher, and every situation, no matter how trivial or traumatic, becomes a sacred opportunity to see yourself more clearly. The enemy you despise, the friend you admire, the stranger who annoys you, the loved one who disappoints you, all of them carry fragments of your own psyche projected outward. When you look into a mirror, you do not argue with your reflection. You do not try to alter the glass to change your appearance. You do not blame the mirror for what it reveals. You understand instinctively that the image you see is your own, whether beautiful or blemished. Yet in life, when you face challenge, conflict, rejection, or discomfort, you often rail against the mirror, trying to control the outer world, thinking if only others changed or circumstances improved, you could find peace. But this is a misunderstanding of the way reality truly operates. What you see is what you are, not always in action, but in resonance. What triggers you touches something unresolved within you. What attracts you reveals what you long for. What you admire in others points to hidden potential in yourself. Every outer circumstance is an invitation inward. To train the mind to win in every situation, you must first surrender the illusion that any situation is merely about the outside. Winning is not always about overcoming the event, but about uncovering the truth beneath it. Why does failure devastate you? Because somewhere within you equate failure with worthlessness. Why does rejection haunt you? Because part of you has attached your value to being accepted. Why does betrayal enrage you? Because trust was built on illusion, not insight. The external event may be the trigger, but the internal landscape is where the real story unfolds. And if you have the courage to look inward, to ask, what is this trying to show me about myself? You step into a position of tremendous power. The unconscious mind does not speak in plain words. It speaks in symbols, in patterns, in repetition. And if you do not learn to listen, It will repeat the same lesson again and again through different faces, different scenarios, different crises, until you pay attention. This is why the same kinds of people seem to hurt you, the same struggles arise in new forms, the same emotional storms come even when the setting changes. It is not the world punishing you, it is your psyche seeking integration. The problem is not out there, it is unintegrated material within, asking to be acknowledged, expressed, healed. A man who blames others for his anger does not yet see the fire he carries. A woman who resents every betrayal does not yet see how often she betrays herself. The child who grows up seeking praise may become the adult who needs constant validation. These patterns are not flaws, they are invitations. They are the soul's way of pointing you toward the wound so that you can turn it into wisdom. When you see life this way, you no longer seek control, you seek clarity. You no longer fixate on changing people, you focus on changing perception. That shift alone is the beginning of mastery. To live without self-awareness is to walk through a hall of mirrors believing each one is real. You are not just the actor on the stage, you are also the playwright, the director, and often the hidden critic in the audience. You project parts of yourself onto others, onto life itself, and then react as if the reflection is separate from you. The mind, untrained, believes these projections are truth, but the trained mind begins to ask, why do I feel this way? What does this moment remind me of? What am I avoiding within myself that this person has activated? Such questions are not signs of weakness, they are signs of awakening. Even success can be a mirror. If you suddenly receive attention or wealth and it overwhelms you, ask yourself why. Perhaps some part of you believes you are unworthy, that you must sabotage what you receive. Or perhaps success brings pressure to maintain a false image you never wanted. The mirror does not only show the shadow, it shows the hidden light as well. What you admire in others, their confidence, their clarity, their kindness, these are not foreign to you. They are qualities sleeping within, waiting to be claimed. What you envy is what you have not yet given yourself permission to become. Relationships especially serve as powerful mirrors. The ones who challenge you, who frustrate or confuse you, are not always enemies of your peace. Often, they are messengers of your growth. The impatient friend may be showing you your own avoidance of confrontation. The manipulative partner may reflect the part of you that fears saying no. The cold parent may awaken the child in you still yearning for approval. None of this means you must accept mistreatment, but it does mean you must examine what part of you still draws such patterns. The people you attract are not random. They are drawn to the frequency of your unconscious beliefs. Change the belief and the people you attract will also change. This is why the spiritual journey is not just about meditation or transcendence. It is about integration. It is about seeing all the parts of yourself, even the ones you have disowned or rejected, and reclaiming them consciously. Projection happens when you disown something within yourself and unconsciously place it onto someone else. You may see arrogance in another, but not realize that it mirrors your own unacknowledged pride or your fear of embodying confidence. You may condemn someone's greed, not realizing you have judged your own desire as sinful. Until you reclaim these parts, they will appear again and again in the world around you. What you disown will continue to find ways to return, not to punish you, but to make you whole. To win in every situation, you must not always change the outcome, but change the meaning you assign to the moment. You must learn to say, what is this teaching me about myself? Rather than why is this happening to me? That single shift from victim to student is where true power begins. Because when you see life as a mirror, nothing is wasted. Even pain becomes sacred. Even failure becomes feedback. Even loss becomes liberation. The mind, once aware of this truth, begins to approach life with greater humility and curiosity. You stop reacting impulsively and begin responding with wisdom. When someone insults you, instead of retaliating, you ask, "What part of me feels insulted? Is it my ego, my wound, my false identity?" When plans fall apart, you ask, "What is this revealing about my attachment to control?" Every mirror, then, becomes a moment of awakening. Every challenge, a door to self-discovery. Every interaction, a chance to see yourself more clearly. Winning is not about forcing the mirror to reflect what you wish it did. It is about cleaning the mirror so that you can finally see what's truly there. Only then can you begin to shape yourself consciously, not based on unconscious pain, but on conscious choice. Only then can the mind serve your higher nature, not your old wounds. Only then can every situation, no matter how chaotic, become a place of clarity and strength. This is the quiet power that comes from understanding life as a mirror, not the power to change others, but the power to reveal yourself. And when you fully see yourself, no situation can defeat you, because every situation becomes part of your becoming. There is a part of you that you have spent most of your life avoiding. You have buried it beneath politeness, behind ambition, under roles and identities crafted to fit into the world's expectations. You do not speak of it. You may not even know it by name. But it always waits, in the corners of your mind, showing up not in words but in impulses, in projections, in dreams. In the way your voice shakes with anger or the way your stomach turns when you feel exposed. This part of you is called the shadow, and until you face it, you cannot claim the fullness of your power. The shadow is not evil. It is not your enemy. It is simply everything in you that has been exiled. It contains your rage, yes, but also your strength. It holds your envy, but also your ambition. It hides your fear, but also your instinct. In trying to be good, you have tried to be incomplete. In trying to be accepted, you have amputated the parts of you that were wild, raw, impulsive, or unrefined. You buried them not because they were bad, but because they were inconvenient, unacceptable to others, or even to the version of yourself you were trying to create. But what you push into the unconscious does not disappear. It waits, and the longer it waits, the more it distorts. A repressed truth becomes a lie you live with. A buried emotion becomes a disease in the body or soul. A hidden fear becomes the very lens through which you see the world. You think you are free, but you are reacting to ghosts. You think you are moral, but your righteousness hides shame. You think you are composed, but the price of your calm is emotional numbness. And the longer you deny the shadow, the more it controls you from behind the scenes. To train your mind to win in every situation, you must be willing to make peace with the shadow. You must be willing to turn toward it, not with judgment, but with curiosity, and not with fear, but with the solemn responsibility of one who knows that true power requires inner integration. Winning is not dominance over others, it is sovereignty over your own psyche. And sovereignty begins when you stop running from the parts of you that were never meant to be enemies. Think of your shadow like a wounded animal. It lashes out not because it is evil, but because it has been cornered, misunderstood, silenced. It holds the memory of rejection, the imprint of shame, the weight of ancestral patterns. It is the scream you were never allowed to release, the no you swallowed to keep peace, the desire you repressed because someone told you it was sinful. But within that same shadow is your untapped power. The ability to say no is also the root of your boundaries. The rage you repress is also the source of your passion. The desire you fear is also the gateway to vitality. This is why those who walk the path of awakening must be fierce in self-honesty. You cannot become whole by pretending to be only light. You must also descend into the depth, into the parts of you that make you uncomfortable. The work is not always graceful. Sometimes it looks like trembling in silence, or admitting things you wish you didn't know about yourself. Sometimes it means facing the pain of your past without the shield of blame or distraction. But this descent is sacred. It is not regression, it is initiation. Most people unconsciously act from their shadow without realizing it. They attack what they don't understand. They shame others for the very qualities they secretly envy. They sabotage their relationships because vulnerability terrifies them. They fear intimacy, not because others are dangerous, but because their own inner world is still a stranger. And so, they live in fear, not of the world, but of themselves, and what they fear, they try to control. But control is a poor substitute for integration. You cannot control what you will not face. You cannot master what you will not meet. When you begin to integrate the shadow, everything changes. You no longer need to prove yourself, because you have met the part of you that feels unworthy and made peace with it. You no longer chase success out of desperation, because you have acknowledged the fear of failure without letting it define you. You no longer perform kindness as a mask, because you have faced the part of you that feels cold, resentful, even cruel. And by seeing it, you have robbed it of the power to act unconsciously. In this way, your mind becomes not a battlefield of contradictions, but a place of profound unity. This is not about acting out your shadow, it is about understanding it. A person who gives themselves permission to feel anger does not become violent, they become clear. A person who owns their envy does not become bitter, they become focused. A person who acknowledges their fear does not become weak, they become courageous. Repression does not lead to holiness, it leads to hypocrisy. But integration leads to authenticity, and authenticity is the foundation of true strength. Imagine the power of a mind that has nothing to hide from itself. Imagine the clarity of a heart that can hold both light and darkness without judgment. Imagine the calm of a soul that no longer runs from its own reflection. This is what it means to train the mind, not to be perfect, but to be whole, to stand in the storm of life and not be tossed around by unseen forces, to act from consciousness, not compulsion, to speak from truth, not performance, to lead from presence, not projection. When you walk into a situation having met your own shadow, you are no longer triggered in the same way. You are no longer easily offended because you no longer carry hidden shame. You are no longer reactive because you have befriended your own emotional chaos. You can face criticism without collapse. You can receive praise without inflation. You can hold power without corruption because the parts of you that once demanded validation have been seen, soothed, and integrated. Do not mistake this work for something gentle or passive. The shadow does not yield easily. It resists being seen, it clings to old narratives, it shows up as fear, resistance, denial. But those who persist, those who commit to the inner work, are rewarded with something the world cannot give them, an unshakable core. A mind that is not fragmented, but focused. A self that is not split, but solid. A life that is not reactive, but radiant with intention. There is no final destination to this work. The shadow evolves as you do. Each new level of growth will reveal new layers of the unconscious, and that is not a burden. It is a blessing, because every encounter with the shadow is an invitation to reclaim more of your soul. Every descent into the unconscious is a rising into fuller power. Every integration is a homecoming, and in that homecoming, you find a mind no longer at war with itself, but a mind trained to serve truth, to reflect wholeness, and to win, not against others, but for the highest version of your own becoming. You believe you are the master of your choices, that the life you live is the result of rational thought and deliberate intention. But this belief is, more often than not, an illusion, a veil that conceals the vast, pulsing architecture of the unconscious mind. What you do, what you desire, what you avoid, what you fear, these are not simply choices of the conscious will. They are the echoes of forgotten memories, of suppressed instincts, of inherited patterns passed down through generations. Your conscious mind is like a boat on the surface of the ocean, while the unconscious is the deep, unseen current beneath it, and until you descend into those depths and become aware of them, you are not steering your life, you are being carried by the tide. The unconscious is not just a personal reservoir of memories or traumas. It is the storehouse of your most primal drives, your unmet needs, your unresolved conflicts, your secret longings. It does not communicate in language. It speaks in symbols, metaphors, behaviors, and patterns. It shows itself in the dreams that disturb your sleep and the patterns you repeat without understanding. It hides in the tone of your voice when you're defensive, in the people you choose to trust, in the goals you pursue with inexplicable intensity. When you lash out for a small reason, it is not the moment that triggered you. It is the unconscious pain that has not been integrated. When you hesitate to act on a dream, it is not prudence that holds you back. It is fear buried so deep you have forgotten its origin. The unconscious does not forget. It stores everything. What the conscious mind disowns, the unconscious mind stores as energy, waiting to be expressed. Much of your suffering stems from this silent inner life, this realm you have not been taught to explore. You feel anxious without knowing why. You sabotage what you love and then weep over the ruins. You seek relationships only to recreate the emotional dynamics you suffered in childhood. You chase success not out of joy, but out of the compulsion to prove something to someone who no longer matters, or perhaps never did. These are not mistakes, they are signals. Each repeated conflict, each emotional reaction, each irrational decision is not proof of failure, but a message from within. But you must learn to listen. You were not taught to listen. You were taught to perform, to be rational, to be productive, to conform to the outer world. But beneath the polished surface of logic lies a mind that is still ruled by images and emotions, by instincts and wounds. When a child grows up without feeling safe, the unconscious forms a belief: the world is dangerous. That belief becomes a lens, and through it, every situation is interpreted. When a person is shamed for expressing their desires, the unconscious concludes, desire is bad. So they live a life of suppression, or they act out desire in distorted ways. These beliefs are not conscious, they are automatic. They are installed in the psyche like invisible programs, running silently but powerfully, directing your life while you think you are in control. To train your mind to win in every situation, you must understand this hidden realm and begin the slow, honest work of uncovering it. This does not mean becoming obsessed with the past or drowning in analysis. It means becoming aware. It means asking in every reactive moment, what is this really about? What belief is driving this behavior? What emotion is hiding beneath this response? The goal is not to judge yourself, but to know yourself. Because what you do not know owns you, and what you know you can transform. The unconscious does not resist being known. It simply needs to be seen, but seeing it requires stillness. It requires stepping away from distraction, noise, performance. It requires the willingness to feel uncomfortable truths. Sometimes you discover that your generosity is rooted in the fear of rejection. Sometimes you realize your ambition is driven by a need to escape feelings of inadequacy. These discoveries can feel like betrayals, but they are actually doorways. To see your unconscious motivation is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is how you begin to reclaim the steering wheel of your life. The unconscious is also shaped by the collective. You are not only a product of your personal experiences. You carry the myths, traumas, archetypes, and cultural programming of your family, your society, your ancestors. This too lives in the unconscious. You may fear failure because somewhere in your lineage, success brought betrayal. You may avoid intimacy because love in your ancestral history was a source of suffering. The body remembers what the mind forgets, and the unconscious stores what the body cannot release. This is why true transformation is never just intellectual. It must also be emotional, embodied, spiritual. One of the clearest reflections of the unconscious is the dream. Dreams are not meaningless images. They are letters from the deeper self. They are metaphors your conscious mind may not immediately understand, but they are filled with significance. When you dream of falling, what part of your life feels out of control? When you dream of being chased, what truth are you avoiding? When a figure appears again and again in your dreams, ask yourself, what part of myself does this figure represent? Dreams are not prophecies, they are mirrors, and learning to read them is like learning the language of your soul. Projection is another way the unconscious speaks. You see in others what you cannot see in yourself. You may admire someone's courage, not realizing it reflects the courage you have not yet claimed. You may despise another's arrogance, not realizing it mirrors your own repressed desire to be powerful. These are not random feelings. They are invitations. If you listen closely, every judgment, every strong emotional response is a flashlight pointing to an unacknowledged corner of your psyche. You do not see the world as it is. You see it as you are. The unconscious bends perception, and until you understand that, you cannot trust your perception entirely. This is not a call to distrust yourself, but to question more deeply. Why do you pursue what you pursue? Why do you fear what you fear? Why do certain wounds still hold power over you? These are not rhetorical questions. They are paths. Walk them, and you begin to discover that your decisions are not simply logical. They are emotional, symbolic, and deeply historical. And this discovery does not make you weak. It makes you powerful, because it allows you to finally take ownership of the unseen parts of your own mind. When your unconscious remains unexamined, you are reactive. You are bound to cycles you do not understand. You find yourself in the same relationships, the same dilemmas, the same inner conflicts, despite your best efforts to change. But when you bring light to what is unconscious, you begin to choose consciously. You begin to act not from compulsion but from clarity. You respond rather than react. You direct your energy instead of being directed by it. Awareness is the first step toward liberation. Once you see the unconscious, it loses its grip. It no longer has to scream through anxiety or sabotage or projection. It can become a partner in your evolution. The very patterns that once hurt you can become your teachers. The wounds can become wisdom. The fears can become fuel, and slowly your mind becomes a sacred instrument, not fractured, not fragmented, but whole. And in wholeness there is strength, not the strength of control, but the strength of alignment. Not the strength of the ego, but the strength of the integrated self. This is what it means to win, not just on the outside, but within. A mind that is not haunted by the unseen, but illuminated by truth. A mind that has learned to listen to the silence beneath the noise. A mind that knows itself deeply, and therefore moves through life with vision, not just reaction. Every human being carries within themselves the seeds of both light and shadow. Yet instead of owning these internal truths, we are often blind to them, not because they do not exist, but because we project them outward. We see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. This mechanism, known as projection, is not just a psychological phenomenon. It is a deeply spiritual obstacle to self-realization. It distorts perception, arrests growth, and chains the soul to unconscious cycles of blame, idealization, fear, and misunderstanding. To project is to take a piece of your internal world and cast it onto someone or something else. It is to unconsciously disown an emotion, a trait, a desire, a fear, and assign it to another. And you do this not because you are evil, but because you are human, because you cannot yet hold the tension of the truth that lives within you. When a person has not met their own aggression, they may accuse others of hostility. When they have disowned their own desire, they may call others immoral. When they fear their own power, they may resent those who express it openly. What is denied inwardly becomes exaggerated outwardly. What is not embraced becomes vilified. And in this way, you become entangled not with others, but with the unacknowledged parts of your own psyche. The tragedy is not that projection happens. It is that most people live their entire lives without realizing they are doing it. They think they are seeing clearly, but they are staring into mirrors. They believe they are responding to the present, but they are reacting to the past. They believe they are making conscious choices, but they are being ruled by inner ghosts. And because projection operates in the shadows of awareness, it binds you to illusions. You live in a world filtered through emotion, judgment, bias, and fear, and you call it truth. To train your mind to win in every situation, you must begin with this sobering fact. You are not always seeing what is there. You are often seeing what you have not faced within yourself. And unless you are willing to ask, what is this reaction teaching me about me? You will remain trapped. Projection is seductive because it allows you to avoid responsibility. It allows you to believe that others are the source of your pain, that the enemy is out there, that change lies in controlling the external. But growth begins the moment you reverse the gaze. When you say, this anger, what part of me is it protecting? Or this judgment, what does it reveal about my own insecurity? That is when the mind begins to evolve. That is when projection becomes reflection, and reflection becomes transformation. Projection also happens in positive form. When you idealize someone, when you put them on a pedestal, when you envy their power or beauty or success often, it is because they reflect a disowned potential within you. They have awakened something sleeping in your unconscious, and instead of integrating it, you inflate them. You imagine they are more than they are. You long for what they have, not realizing that it already exists in embryonic form within you. And so, your admiration becomes worship, and your worship becomes dependency. But the truth is this: no one has anything that you cannot awaken in yourself. What you admire in others is a call to action, a sign that your soul is ready to remember its own forgotten power. This is why your relationships are sacred teachers. They show you where your work is. They reflect your wounds, your patterns, your potential. The person who irritates you may carry your unexpressed assertiveness. The one who inspires you may embody your buried courage. The one who intimidates you may reflect your unlived boldness. Each encounter is an invitation to go inward. But most people reject the invitation. They cling to the comfort of blame. They say, "This person made me feel this way," instead of asking, "What part of me responded this way and why?" In doing so, they forfeit their growth. But those who accept the invitation begin to see the world not as a battlefield, but as a mirror. Every experience becomes a message. Every conflict becomes a classroom. Every emotion becomes a clue. And this is where the mind begins to shift. It stops being reactive and becomes reflective. It no longer needs to be right. It longs to understand. It no longer fears the truth. It pursues it, even when it hurts. And in that pursuit, the individual slowly becomes sovereign. Projection also distorts intimacy. You cannot truly love another until you stop projecting your unmet needs onto them. You cannot truly see another until you stop filtering them through the lens of your unresolved history. Many people fall in love not with the person in front of them, but with the version of themselves they long to be. They confuse connection with completion. They ask others to carry what they have not yet healed, and when the illusion breaks, as it always does, they feel betrayed, but the betrayal was not by the other. It was by the image, the fantasy, the projection. To break this cycle requires radical self-honesty. It requires a willingness to say, this reaction is mine, this feeling is familiar, I have been here before, not because life is unfair, but because I have not yet learned what I am being asked to learn. And this honesty is painful. It shatters illusions. It demands humility. It requires the courage to look in the mirror and see the parts you once hoped to deny. But there is no liberation without this confrontation. There is no peace without this reckoning. To awaken is not to feel enlightened. It is to feel everything you have been avoiding, and then to find clarity on the other side. One of the gifts of becoming conscious of your projections is that you reclaim your energy. Every time you project, you lose power. You give your emotional authority to someone else. You attach your value to their approval. You define your reality through their behavior. But when you withdraw projection, you reclaim the energy that has been scattered. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop blaming and start building. You stop fleeing discomfort and start listening to it. And slowly, you become grounded, not in ego, but in essence. This is what it means to train the mind to win. Not to dominate, not to control, but to see clearly, to pierce illusion, to navigate conflict with wisdom, to meet projection with reflection, to respond to the world not from wounds, but from awareness. The more you see yourself, the less you need to blame others. The more you own your inner life, the less you are controlled by external events. You become the observer of your reactions, the author of your thoughts, the architect of your behavior. Projection is not the enemy, it is the starting point. Every time you catch yourself projecting, you have a choice to follow the projection into unconscious reaction, or to follow the thread back into yourself. And if you choose the latter, you will find not shame, but insight, not weakness, but wisdom. You will see that what you feared in others was a misunderstood part of yourself. What you hated was what you had not yet healed. What you chased was what you had not yet claimed. And in that realization, the mirror becomes clear, the mind becomes whole, and the path, once clouded by judgment and fear, becomes illuminated by the quiet, relentless light of self-awareness. There is a battle happening within you, whether or not you recognize it. It is not the kind of war waged with swords or loud voices, nor is it fought in the visible corners of the world. This battle is silent, intimate, and unrelenting. It is the struggle between the part of you that is longing to grow and the part of you that clings to comfort, safety, and familiarity. It is a war between your potential and your resistance to that very potential. And until you learn to recognize this inner resistance, not as a weakness, but as a necessary opponent, you will continue to blame the world for what is actually happening inside your soul. It is easy to imagine that the obstacles to your evolution are external. The people who misunderstand you, the lack of opportunity, the misfortunes that visit your path, but those are not your true enemies. They are the conditions, the terrain. The real confrontation is not with the world, but with yourself. It is the refusal to confront your patterns, your fears, your inertia. It is the moment you look at a hard truth and turn away. It is the comfort of excuses over the discomfort of transformation. And yet, it is precisely in those uncomfortable places where your power lies. What you often call fear is resistance. What you call procrastination is resistance. What you rationalize as not the right time is often resistance. It disguises itself cleverly, sometimes as logic, sometimes as caution, sometimes as humility. But underneath it all lies one simple truth. Your current self is threatened by your becoming, because growth always asks for something to die, an identity, a pattern, a belief, a story you've told yourself for so long that it feels like truth. And the ego, that master of continuity, does not surrender easily. You say you want to change, but when change arrives in the form of discomfort, your instinct is to run. You want to be courageous, but avoid the places that would demand your courage. You long to speak your truth, yet silence yourself in the name of keeping peace. You crave meaning, but fear the cost of letting go of the meaningless. This is not a flaw in your character. It is the nature of the psyche, pulled by the gravity of the known, even when the known is painful. The known feels safe, the unknown feels like death, and in some ways it is. Every real step toward growth is a kind of ego death, the crumbling of an outdated version of you that no longer serves your becoming. Inner resistance is subtle. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers in the form of perfectionism. Wait until it's perfect. Sometimes it masks itself as comparison. Others are doing it better, so why try? Sometimes it takes the shape of fatigue, apathy, distraction. But if you listen closely, you'll notice something else. It always appears right before a breakthrough. It intensifies just as you are about to do something new, uncomfortable, or transformational. This is not a coincidence. Resistance guards the gate of your evolution. The greater the resistance, the more sacred the growth it is trying to protect. That is why the real path of transformation is not found by avoiding resistance, but by walking through it. You must learn to expect it, to sit with it, to study it, not to shame it, but to understand it. It is a message, not a verdict. It is saying, you are standing at the edge of your current identity, and what lies beyond cannot be reached without surrender. In this way, resistance becomes your teacher. It shows you where you are still attached to old versions of self, where fear still holds dominion, where love has not yet touched. You do not train your mind to win by avoiding this inner enemy. You train it by meeting resistance with presence. When fear rises, you do not suppress it. You ask, what am I afraid of losing? When procrastination visits, you do not drown in guilt. You ask, what part of me does not feel worthy of forward movement? This is how awareness begins to loosen the grip of inertia, not through force, but through insight. The goal is not to overpower your resistance, but to dissolve it through understanding. Because what you understand, you no longer fear. The world will offer you many challenges, but none so persistent or persuasive as the voice within that says, stay small. That voice is not evil, it is scared. It is the remnant of every moment you felt unsafe being seen, every wound that came from taking a risk, every memory of failure, betrayal, ridicule. It whispers, do not go there again. And unless you meet that voice with compassion and courage, you will obey it without knowing you are doing so. You will stay in relationships that shrink you, jobs that numb you, habits that sedate you, not because you are weak, but because resistance has told you this is what survival requires. But survival is not enough. Your soul was not born to merely endure. It came to awaken, to evolve, to shed layers, to rise, and that rising will not happen in comfort. It will happen in the fire of resistance, in the moments where you want to quit, but choose to stay, in the conversations you want to avoid, but choose to have, in the truths you want to ignore, but choose to speak. Every time you move through resistance, you reclaim a piece of your freedom, and freedom is not the absence of struggle. It is the refusal to be imprisoned by fear. Inner resistance also thrives in unconsciousness. When you do not slow down, you cannot see it. When you do not reflect, you cannot name it. That is why stillness is essential. You must create space to hear the subtle tremors of your soul. You must become a witness to your own inner world, not just a participant. When you feel the pull of distraction, ask why. When you feel the sting of envy, inquire within. When you sabotage your own joy, become curious. These are not moments of failure. They are openings. The psyche is always inviting you home, even when it does so through discomfort. And so, the discipline of growth is not merely about action. It is about attention. It is about bringing light into the dark corridors of your own resistance. Not so you can eliminate it, but so you can work with it. Resistance does not disappear. It evolves. With each level of growth, it shows up in new forms. But as you grow, so does your awareness. You begin to see it more quickly, respond to it more wisely, and move through it more gracefully. You become intimate with your own inner landscape. And in that intimacy, you find strength. Not the brittle strength of denial, but the rooted strength of integration. No external victory will ever match the triumph of overcoming your own resistance. No applause, no reward, no validation can replace the quiet knowing that you have faced the part of yourself that wanted to run and chose to stay, that you have looked your fear in the eye and walked forward anyway, that you have honored the voice of your soul even when the ego screamed in protest. This is what it means to win, not in comparison with others, but in harmony with your highest self. There will always be reasons not to grow. There will always be temptations to stay the same, but beyond the fear, beyond the doubt, beyond the resistance lies something deeper, your truth. And once you taste that truth, even briefly, you can no longer return to the sleep you once called life. You will be haunted not by fear of failure, but by the awareness of what you are capable of, and that awareness, if you honor it, will guide you. It will not always make the path easy, but it will make it meaningful. And in that meaning, you will find not just progress, but purpose, not just change, but awakening. We are taught from a very young age to compete, to strive, to measure our value against others. The world builds ladders and says, climb. It presents mirrors and says, compare. In this relentless pursuit of victory over others, we lose sight of the most important battle, the one that unfolds within. For no true success, no lasting peace, no enduring power can be found in defeating another if you remain a stranger to your own soul. The illusion of external triumph is seductive. It offers applause, reward, and fleeting identity. But the highest victory is not in domination. It is in the quiet, unwavering mastery of self. Mastery over self is not a single event. It is a daily devotion. It is the discipline of observing your thoughts without becoming enslaved by them. It is the art of listening to your emotions without being driven by them. It is the ability to act from awareness rather than reaction. This kind of mastery is not loud. It does not seek attention. It is not impressed by the trophies of the world. It is inward, patient, deliberate. It is born in the still hours of reflection, in the discomfort of honesty, in the courage it takes to face who you truly are, beyond your persona, beyond your projections, beyond the stories you tell to feel safe. The one who has mastered themselves is not swayed by every opinion or defeated by every failure. They do not need to win every argument or prove every point. Their power is not dependent on the behavior of others. Their peace is not held hostage by circumstance. They have learned the ancient secret that to rule the inner kingdom is greater than to conquer any external empire, because the outer world is always changing, always shifting, always out of your full control. But the inner world, if trained, if honored, if illuminated, can remain steady, anchored, and free. What makes self-mastery so rare is that it requires a kind of bravery few are taught. The bravery to be alone with your own thoughts. The bravery to examine your wounds instead of numbing them. The bravery to admit where you have been the architect of your own suffering. It is much easier to blame, to distract, to chase after the next thing that promises fulfillment. But those things only delay the reckoning. Sooner or later, the soul demands your attention. It will not be silenced by success. It will not be fooled by status. It will whisper to you in the quiet. It will call you to the mirror. And if you ignore it long enough, it will shake your life until you finally listen. Mastery begins the moment you take responsibility, not just for your actions, but for your patterns, for the unconscious beliefs that have shaped your life, for the ways you have given your power to fear, to trauma, to the expectations of others. This is not about guilt. It is about awakening. It is about reclaiming the authority that was always yours. When you stop waiting for the world to change and begin changing your inner world, you shift from victim to creator. You stop being at the mercy of your circumstances and begin to respond with clarity, with wisdom, with grounded purpose. This path is not linear. You will stumble, you will regress, you will face resistance not once, but many times. But each moment of awareness is a victory. Each time you choose reflection over reaction, you strengthen your core. Each time you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it, you build resilience. Mastery is not about perfection, it is about presence. It is not about being above human emotion. It is about becoming conscious of how you move through it. It is about owning your anger, not projecting it, understanding your fear, not obeying it, honoring your grief, not drowning in it. The one who masters themselves is not emotionless. They are emotionally integrated. They do not suppress what they feel, but neither are they ruled by it. They allow their emotions to inform them, not control them. They know that every feeling has a root, a message, a lesson, and instead of reacting blindly, they pause. They breathe, they listen, they respond with intention. This is not weakness. This is strength in its purest form. It is the strength to hold space for your humanity without abandoning your awareness. Self-mastery also means freedom from the tyranny of the ego. The ego wants to be right, to be seen, to be praised. It is constantly seeking proof of its worth through others, but the soul does not need validation. It knows its value. And so, the master does not chase recognition. They do not seek superiority. They are not threatened by the success of others. They are rooted in a deeper knowing that their worth is not negotiable and their path is not comparable. They celebrate others because they no longer see life as a competition. They uplift others because they have no need to diminish anyone to feel strong. In this way, self-mastery brings harmony, not only within, but also in how one relates to the world. To master the self is also to develop the discipline of choice. Every day, you are offered countless opportunities to return to old habits or to step into higher awareness. You can choose to react or to reflect, to defend or to understand, to avoid or to engage. Each choice is a brushstroke in the painting of your character, and over time, those small moments of choice become who you are. The master is not free because they have no struggle. The master is free because they have learned how to choose in the presence of struggle. They have learned to anchor themselves in values rather than moods, in truth rather than comfort, in intention rather than impulse. This is the quiet revolution of the soul. It does not require grand gestures. It requires daily devotion. It asks that you notice when you are triggered, and instead of reacting, inquire. It asks that you pay attention when you feel envy or judgment or shame, and instead of hiding from it, get curious. It asks that you see each challenge not as an enemy, but as a mirror. What does this moment reveal about me? What part of myself am I being invited to integrate? These questions turn life into a path of initiation, and with each insight, with each act of courage, you rise. True mastery is deeply humble. It does not posture. It does not inflate itself. It is rooted in the understanding that there is always more to learn, more to see, more to become. It is not static. It is fluid. It is not rigid. It is responsive. The master is the one who continues to walk, not because they are dissatisfied, but because they are devoted. Devoted to truth, devoted to awakening, devoted to becoming a clearer vessel for what is real, what is beautiful, what is eternal. You cannot train your mind to win in every situation by mastering others. You cannot control life into submission, but you can master your responses. You can build a mind that is sharp, clear, resilient, and compassionate. You can cultivate a heart that is open, courageous, and aligned. You can become the kind of presence that does not dominate a room, but elevates it. And in doing so, you realize that the only true victory worth pursuing is the one that sets your own spirit free. The one that allows you to walk through life with integrity, with clarity, with quiet power. And once you taste this kind of victory, the victory of being fully yourself, without shame, without mask, without fear, you will never again be satisfied with anything less. Because the highest mountain is not the one you climb over others. It is the one you ascend within. And that summit, once reached, reveals a view no external conquest can match. Peace within, purpose alive, and power rooted in truth. You are not born to live as a prisoner of your mind, ruled by shadows you do not understand. You were born to walk through those shadows, to confront them with courage, and to emerge awakened, whole, and sovereign. The mind is not your enemy, it is your greatest tool, but only when it is trained, only when it becomes the servant of your soul rather than the master of your fear. Every moment of doubt, every wave of resistance, every projection and inner conflict. They are not signs of failure, but invitations. Invitations to look deeper, to see clearer, and to choose differently. Victory is not about dominance. It is not about external validation. It is about knowing, in the stillness of your being, that you have faced yourself, and not run. That you have seen what was unconscious and brought it into light. That you have lived not in reaction to life, but in alignment with something higher within you. The true battle is always within, and the true triumph is transformation. Train your mind not to conquer others, but to master yourself. For the one who has mastered the self has already won, no matter what the world may say.